Begin, be bold, and venture to be wise. Horace. Most people believe that success is about seizing opportunities. They think it's about being quick, reactive, and spotting the right moment to strike. That's a comforting lie we tell ourselves to justify impulsive decisions and a lack of preparation. The truth is, real success isn't about reacting. It's about designing the game itself. It's about understanding the underlying forces at play, anticipating future possibilities, and maneuvering yourself into a position of inevitable advantage. Winners don't just react to opportunities, they create them. They don't chase fleeting moments, they build systems that generate favorable outcomes over and over again. They see the board, not just the next move. The reactive mind is a prisoner of the present. It's constantly bombarded with information, reacting to the loudest signals and fighting fires as they erupt. It's a state of perpetual crisis, where every decision feels urgent and every outcome feels random. But beneath the surface chaos, there are patterns. There are predictable consequences to every action, and there are systemic forces that shape the landscape of possibilities. The strategic mind seeks to understand these patterns, to identify the leverage points, and to exert influence on the system as a whole. It's about playing the long game, sacrificing short-term gains for long-term dominance. This isn't about luck or talent or some innate gift. It's about a fundamental shift in perspective. It's about recognizing that the world isn't a series of isolated events, but a complex web of interconnected systems. It's about understanding that every decision, no matter how small, has ripple effects that can shape the future. And it's about taking responsibility for designing that future, rather than simply reacting to it. The reactive mind sees obstacles. The strategic mind sees opportunities to reshape the playing field. The reactive mind sees threats. The strategic mind sees vulnerabilities to exploit. The reactive mind is a pawn. The strategic mind is the player. To operate strategically requires a degree of detachment, an ability to step back from the emotional fray and analyze the situation with cold, calculating logic. It means resisting the urge to react impulsively, to lash out in anger, or to be swayed by fear. It means cultivating a sense of inner calm, a stillness of mind that allows you to see the patterns that others miss. This isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about understanding them, recognizing their influence, and consciously choosing how to respond. Emotions are data points, not directives. They can provide valuable insights into your own motivations and the motivations of others, but they should never dictate your actions. The illusion of control is a powerful one. It's the belief that you can predict and control every outcome, that you can bend reality to your will through sheer force of effort. But the truth is, the world is far too complex and unpredictable to be controlled in that way. The strategic mind doesn't seek to control the world, it seeks to understand it. It seeks to identify the underlying forces at play, to anticipate future possibilities, and to position itself in a way that maximizes its chances of success. It's about influencing the system, not controlling it. It's about playing the odds, not defying them. Ultimately, the difference between those who succeed and those who struggle comes down to their approach. Are they reacting to the world, or are they designing it? Are they chasing opportunities, or are they creating them? Are they prisoners of the present, or are they masters of the future? The choice is yours. You can continue to react to the world, to be swept along by the currents of fate, or you can step back, analyze the system, and begin to shape your own destiny. The path to true success lies not in reacting to opportunities, but in foreseeing and creating them. The ability to foresee calculated paths isn't some mystical power. It's the direct result of disciplined observation, pattern recognition, and a willingness to delay gratification. The impulsive mind seeks immediate rewards, instant gratification, and validation in the present moment. The strategic mind is willing to sacrifice short-term gains for long-term advantage. It understands that true success often requires years of preparation, countless hours of study, and the patience to wait for the right moment to strike. Consider the chess grandmaster who sacrifices a pawn early in the game to gain a positional advantage that won't pay off until many moves later. That sacrifice isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of foresight. It's a calculated risk taken with a clear understanding of the potential consequences. This is the mindset that separates the masters from the amateurs in any field. The capacity to foresee opportunities stems from a deep understanding of systems. Every industry, every market, every human interaction is a system governed by certain rules and principles. By studying these systems, by identifying the key players and their motivations, by understanding the flows of information and resources, you can begin to anticipate future trends and identify potential points of leverage. This requires a willingness to look beyond the surface, to delve into the underlying dynamics that shape the system. It requires a commitment to lifelong learning, a constant pursuit of knowledge, and a willingness to challenge your own assumptions. One of the biggest obstacles to strategic thinking is cognitive bias. These are mental shortcuts that our brains use to simplify complex information, but they can also lead to errors in judgment. Confirmation bias, for example, is the tendency to seek out information that confirms your existing beliefs and to ignore information that contradicts them. This can lead you to become overly confident in your own judgment and to underestimate the risks involved in your decisions. Another common bias is the availability heuristic, which is the tendency to overestimate the likelihood of events that are easily recalled from memory, such as dramatic or emotionally charged events. This can lead you to make decisions based on fear rather than on logic. To overcome these biases, you need to cultivate a mindset of intellectual humility. This means acknowledging the limits of your own knowledge and being open to the possibility that you might be wrong. It means actively seeking out diverse perspectives, challenging your own assumptions, and constantly testing your beliefs against reality. It also means being willing to admit your mistakes and learn from them. The strategic mind is not afraid to be wrong. It sees mistakes as opportunities for growth and improvement. Furthermore, the ability to foresee calculated paths is deeply intertwined with understanding human psychology. Markets are not driven by abstract economic forces alone. They are driven by human behavior. Understanding the motivations, biases, and irrationalities of other people is crucial for anticipating their actions and predicting future trends. This requires empathy, the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and see the world from their perspective. It also requires a degree of cynicism, a healthy skepticism towards the pronouncements of experts and the claims of advertisers. The strategic mind is not easily fooled. It understands that people are often motivated by self-interest, and that information can be manipulated to serve a particular agenda. Emotional intelligence is just as critical as intellectual intelligence. It's not enough to understand the world. You also need to understand yourself. You need to be aware of your own emotions, your own biases, and your own vulnerabilities. You need to be able to manage your emotions effectively, to control your impulses, and to make rational decisions even under pressure. This requires self-discipline, a commitment to personal growth, and a willingness to confront your own weaknesses. The strategic mind is not immune to emotions, but it doesn't allow emotions to control its actions. It uses emotions as a source of information, but it ultimately relies on reason and logic to make decisions. Consider the concept of asymmetric information. This refers to situations where one party has more information than the other party. This can create opportunities for exploitation, but it can also create opportunities for strategic advantage. By gathering information that others don't have, by analyzing data that others ignore, you can gain an edge over your competitors. This requires a relentless pursuit of knowledge, a commitment to research, and a willingness to invest in intelligence gathering. The strategic mind is always seeking out new information, always trying to understand the system better, always looking for opportunities to exploit asymmetries. Ultimately, foreseeing calculated paths is about creating options. It's about positioning yourself in a way that gives you the greatest possible flexibility and control over your future. This requires proactive planning, anticipating potential scenarios, and developing contingency plans. It also requires a degree of adaptability, a willingness to change your plans as new information becomes available. The strategic mind is not rigid, it's fluid. It understands that the world is constantly changing, and that the ability to adapt is essential for survival. The long game is not about winning every battle, it's about winning the war. It's about building a sustainable advantage over time, about creating a system that consistently produces positive outcomes. This requires a long-term perspective, a willingness to delay gratification, and a focus on building strong relationships. It also requires a commitment to ethical behavior, a recognition that trust is essential for long-term success. The strategic mind understands that shortcuts and unethical tactics may provide short-term gains, but they ultimately undermine trust and erode your long-term advantage. Consider the example of Amazon's rise to dominance in the e-commerce sector. It wasn't a sudden surge, but a calculated, decades-long campaign of strategic positioning and relentless execution. Jeff Bezos didn't simply build an online bookstore. He envisioned a complete ecosystem, a platform that could sell anything to anyone, anywhere in the world. This vision wasn't just a dream. It was a strategic plan meticulously crafted and aggressively implemented. Amazon's initial focus on books was a calculated move, a way to enter the market with a relatively simple product, build a robust logistics network, and gather crucial customer data. They understood that books, with their standardized sizes and relatively low cost, were an ideal testing ground for their ambitious plans. This wasn't about a love of literature. It was about exploiting an opportunity to gain a strategic advantage. Amazon's early investments in technology and infrastructure were also driven by a long-term strategic vision. While competitors focused on short-term profitability, Amazon poured its resources into building advanced warehousing and delivery systems, even when it meant incurring significant losses. They understood that efficient logistics were essential for delivering a superior customer experience and creating a sustainable competitive advantage. This willingness to sacrifice short-term gains for long-term dominance is a hallmark of strategic thinking. Amazon wasn't playing the quarterly earnings game. They were playing the long game, a game where patience and strategic investments ultimately pay off. Furthermore, Amazon's expansion into new product categories was a carefully orchestrated process. They didn't simply jump into every market that looked promising. They systematically evaluated opportunities, assessed their capabilities, and made strategic acquisitions to fill gaps in their expertise. The acquisition of Zappos, for example, allowed Amazon to gain a foothold in the online shoe market and acquire valuable expertise in e-commerce fulfillment. This wasn't a random act of corporate acquisition. It was a calculated move to strengthen their overall strategic position. Amazon's relentless focus on customer experience is another key element of their strategic success. They understood that creating a loyal customer base was essential for long-term growth and profitability. They invested heavily in personalized recommendations, easy returns, and exceptional customer service. This wasn't just about being nice to customers. It was about creating a competitive advantage that was difficult for rivals to replicate. By consistently exceeding customer expectations, Amazon built a strong brand reputation and fostered a culture of customer loyalty. This loyalty translated into repeat business, positive word-of-mouth referrals, and a significant barrier to entry for potential competitors. Even Amazon's pricing strategies were carefully calculated to maximize their long-term strategic advantage. They were willing to sacrifice profit margins in the short term to gain market share and build customer loyalty. This aggressive pricing strategy often drew criticism from competitors and regulators, but it was a deliberate part of their long-term plan. They understood that by offering lower prices, they could attract more customers, increase their sales volume, and ultimately achieve economies of scale that would allow them to further reduce their costs. This wasn't about undercutting the competition. It was about creating a virtuous cycle of growth and profitability. Moreover, Amazon's foray into cloud computing with Amazon Web Services, AWS, was a masterstroke of strategic foresight. They recognized that their massive investment in computing infrastructure could be leveraged to provide services to other businesses. Oz not only became a major source of revenue and profit, but also provided Amazon with valuable insights into the needs of its customers and the overall technology landscape. This wasn't just about finding a new revenue stream. It was about creating a strategic asset that would further strengthen their competitive position. In essence, Amazon's success is a testament to the power of calculated paths foreseen. They didn't simply react to market trends. They anticipated them, shaped them, and ultimately dominated them. Their strategic thinking, relentless execution, and unwavering focus on the long game allowed them to build a business empire that few could have imagined. This example underscores the importance of strategic planning, proactive decision-making, and a willingness to invest in the future. It also highlights the potential rewards that await those who are able to see beyond the present and anticipate the calculated paths that lie ahead. Amazon's story is not just about selling products online. It's about understanding systems, anticipating change, and building a sustainable advantage in a constantly evolving world. They understood that the marketplace is a chessboard, and that every move must be calculated to achieve the ultimate victory. The weak, however, consistently fall into traps of their own making. They are consumed by the immediate, blinded by short-term gains, and utterly incapable of recognizing the systemic forces that shape their reality. Their decisions are driven by emotion, by fear, by greed, and by a fundamental lack of understanding of the larger game. They see only the pawn in front of them, never the queen poised to strike. They chase after fleeting opportunities, neglecting to build a solid foundation for long-term success. They are reactive, not proactive, always scrambling to catch up, never setting the pace. Their strategy, if it can even be called that, is a series of desperate gambles, a chaotic jumble of moves without any coherent plan or purpose. They fail to see the interconnectedness of things, the subtle relationships between cause and effect, the hidden patterns that reveal the true nature of the game. Consider the entrepreneur who invests everything in a single product, neglecting to diversify or build a brand. When the market shifts, their entire enterprise collapses, leaving them with nothing. Or the company that focuses solely on cost-cutting, sacrificing quality and innovation in the process. They may achieve short-term savings, but they ultimately erode their competitive advantage, leaving them vulnerable to disruption. Or the individual who prioritizes immediate gratification over long-term goals, indulging in fleeting pleasures while neglecting their health, their relationships, and their financial security. They may enjoy a brief moment of satisfaction, but they ultimately pay the price in the form of regret, unhappiness, and unfulfilled potential. These are not isolated incidents, but rather manifestations of a deeper pattern. The weak are trapped by their own limited perspective, their inability to think strategically, their lack of discipline, and their susceptibility to emotional impulses. They fail to recognize the importance of planning, preparation, and perseverance. They underestimate the power of compound interest, both in finance and in life. They overestimate their own abilities and underestimate the challenges they face. They are easily distracted, constantly chasing after the next shiny object, never committing to a course of action long enough to see it through. They are surrounded by noise, unable to filter out the irrelevant and focus on what truly matters. The trap is not always obvious, and it often presents itself as an opportunity. A get-rich-quick scheme, a guaranteed investment, a too-good-to-be-true deal. These are all bait, designed to lure the unsuspecting into a web of deceit and exploitation. The weak, driven by greed and a lack of due diligence, readily fall for these traps, sacrificing their hard-earned resources for the illusion of easy wealth. They fail to recognize that true wealth is built slowly and deliberately, through hard work, smart choices, and a long-term perspective. They are impatient, always seeking shortcuts, never willing to put in the necessary effort. Moreover, the weak often fall prey to the trap of complacency. They become comfortable with the status quo, resistant to change, and unwilling to adapt to new circumstances. They cling to outdated strategies and outdated beliefs, ignoring the warning signs of impending disruption. They fail to see that the world is constantly evolving, and that those who fail to adapt will inevitably be left behind. They become arrogant, believing that their past success guarantees future success, forgetting that the rules of the game can change at any moment. They are blind to their own weaknesses, unwilling to learn from their mistakes, and incapable of self-improvement. The trap is a consequence of a fundamental misunderstanding of how the world works. The weak see the world as a random, chaotic place, where success is a matter of luck and failure is simply a matter of bad fortune. They fail to recognize that the world is governed by laws, by patterns, and by systems. They fail to see that their actions have consequences, and that their choices determine their destiny. They are victims of their own ignorance, trapped in a cycle of reactivity and failure. Breaking free from this trap requires a radical shift in mindset. It requires a commitment to strategic thinking, a willingness to learn and adapt, a disciplined approach to decision-making, and a long-term perspective. It requires the ability to see beyond the immediate and to anticipate the consequences of your actions. It requires the courage to take calculated risks and the resilience to overcome setbacks. It requires a deep understanding of the game and an unwavering focus on the ultimate goal. It demands the ability to separate signal from noise, to identify the critical factors that drive success, and to ignore the distractions that lead to failure. The ability to anticipate your opponent's moves is not some mystical power, but a direct result of understanding their motivations, their constraints, and their predictable patterns of behavior. Chess masters don't just see the board in front of them. They see the entire game played out in their minds, visualizing the consequences of each move several steps ahead. This level of foresight comes from relentless study, rigorous analysis, and countless hours of practice. They analyze not just the positions, but the players themselves, understanding their tendencies, their strengths, and their weaknesses. By recognizing these patterns, they can predict their opponent's responses with a high degree of accuracy, allowing them to control the flow of the game and to steer it towards a favorable outcome. This isn't about luck, it's about applied knowledge and strategic foresight. This is the art of calculated paths foreseen. Machiavelli understood that power is not merely about brute force, but about cunning, deception, and the strategic manipulation of others. He argued that a prince must be willing to do whatever it takes to maintain his power, even if it means acting immorally or ruthlessly. This isn't an endorsement of evil, but a pragmatic recognition of the realities of power. In a world where others are constantly vying for advantage, a leader cannot afford to be naive or idealistic. They must be willing to play the game according to its rules, even if those rules are unpleasant. To survive and thrive, you must understand the darker aspects of human nature and be prepared to use them to your advantage. This doesn't mean abandoning your principles, but it does mean recognizing that the world is not always a fair or just place. It means making difficult choices and accepting the consequences of those choices. It means prioritizing the long-term interests of your strategy above short-term moral considerations. Success in any endeavor requires a willingness to embrace calculated risk. Playing it safe might seem appealing, but it rarely leads to significant gains. The greatest rewards often come from taking chances, from venturing into the unknown, from daring to do what others are unwilling to do. However, taking risks blindly is foolish. Calculated risk involves carefully assessing the potential benefits and drawbacks of each course of action, weighing the odds, and making informed decisions. It means understanding the potential downsides and having a plan in place to mitigate them. It means being prepared to fail and learning from your mistakes. Those who are unwilling to take risks will inevitably be overtaken by those who are. The world rewards boldness and initiative, not timidity and caution. This requires a deep understanding of yourself, your capabilities, and your tolerance for risk. It requires the ability to make tough decisions under pressure and to remain calm in the face of adversity. The long game is not about immediate gratification. It's about building a sustainable advantage over time. It's about investing in the future, even if the returns are not immediately apparent. It's about building relationships, developing skills, and creating systems that will pay off in the long run. Those who focus only on the present are doomed to short-term thinking and reactive decision-making. They are constantly chasing the next quick win, never building a solid foundation for long-term success. The long game requires patience, discipline, and a willingness to delay gratification. It requires a clear vision of the future and a commitment to working towards that vision, even when the path is difficult. This is about thinking beyond the next quarter, the next year, or even the next decade. It's about building a legacy that will last for generations. This requires anticipating future trends, adapting to changing circumstances, and remaining flexible in the face of uncertainty. A systemic advantage comes not from isolated actions, but from creating a network of interconnected elements that reinforce each other. It's about building a system that is greater than the sum of its parts, a system that is self-sustaining and self-improving. This requires a holistic perspective, the ability to see how different elements interact with each other, and to optimize the system as a whole. It's about creating feedback loops that drive continuous improvement and innovation. Those who focus only on individual components will miss the bigger picture and fail to create a truly sustainable advantage. The key is to design a system that is both efficient and resilient, capable of adapting to changing circumstances and weathering unforeseen challenges. This requires a deep understanding of the underlying dynamics of the system and the ability to identify and address its weaknesses. It demands a willingness to experiment, to iterate, and to continuously refine the system over time. The truly calculated path is not merely seen, it is constructed. It is a framework built on the bedrock of understanding, each stone carefully placed to support the structure of long-term success. It is about shifting your perception from reactive to proactive, from being a pawn on the board to becoming the player who dictates the game's terms. This transition requires a fundamental rewiring of your decision-making process, a move away from impulsive choices driven by immediate desires, and a commitment to strategic actions aligned with your ultimate goals. Think of it as architectural planning for your life, a blueprint for a future where success is not a matter of chance, but a carefully engineered outcome. To foresee the calculated path, you must learn to dissect the present, analyze its components, and extrapolate the possible futures that stem from it. This requires developing the ability to identify patterns, to recognize the subtle signals that indicate impending shifts, and to anticipate the consequences of your actions and the actions of others. It's about understanding the second and third order effects, the ripple effects that extend far beyond the initial impact. It is a practice of constantly asking, "What if?" and rigorously evaluating the potential scenarios. This mental discipline, this constant simulation of possibilities,